welcome back to another Planet Zoo video. Thanks for tuning in today, and as you can see here, this is what we're going to be building today. This is our Himalayan bear habitat. We've gone through the letters A to G, and we've now started on the letter H, so the next habitat is going to be the regular hippopotamuses. As you can see, this is quite a grand habitat because the species is a very endangered species, so we want to draw a lot of attention to that in Alphabet Zoo. It's sort of a kind of circular habitat, which is why I've kind of dubbed it the bear pit. And we have two bears, so they're already in. And we have Baloo, our male Himalayan bear. As you can see, he's just chilling in his habitat, enjoying the view. And we also have a female bear around, if I can find her. Here she is. And this is Winnie, named after bears from literature. So, oh, it's starting to rain. Well, yeah, so we have this sort of main viewing area, and then we also have another viewing area in a little cave, which you'll see me build, just below Bamboo Station. And yeah, so let's head over to the speed build now, and stay tuned for the cinematics at the end. Right, so obviously with this habitat, I start off with the path. As always, start off with the path. I wanted to have like a designated viewing area, and I kind of wanted to have it in like a semicircle shape, which is kind of what you can see here. Obviously Himalayan brown bears are known to be sort of, in the Himalayas, kind of around Nepal, and, they're found in Pakistan as well, they're not known areas for being sort of like flat, they're known for being like quite mountainous. So I wanted the habitat to sort of have all these different layers and to kind of give it that kind of feeling that it's a mountainous kind of rocky habitat. Interestingly enough, like in Pakistan, Himalayan brown bears tend to be found sort of in marshlands actually, as well. I was just doing a little bit of reading up on the species before I sort of made this video, and it's quite interesting. So Himalayan brown bears are effectively a subspecies of the normal brown bear, and brown bears are on the decline across Europe and kind of the Euro-Asia continent anyway, just because of loss of habitat really, and persecution by humans. So the Himalayan brown bears are a more endangered subspecies of the brown bear. So this was sort of this little habitat that I wanted to create for them, and I wanted it to sort of reflect this lovely kind of forested kind of natural habitat. I've done an awful lot of rock work in this habitat too, because obviously, if it's going to be mountainy, it's going to be rocky. So whenever I build rocks, I always build them into like a cliff face. So as you can see, we've got different layers in this habitat. We've got sort of almost 2 or 3 different tiers, and it's good to just, place the rocks into like a cliff face. And again, here I was just hiding some of the kind of mess, I suppose, of the sort of the tree bridge. And then just doing a little bit of terrain, making it look a little bit prettier and sort of how it would be. So yeah, so here I start on the actual viewing area. Now this is kind of what helped me dub this a bear pit, is because it's kind of this almost circular sort of looking down into the bear's habitat kind of a thing, sort of a little bit like a pit, and I decided I wanted to sort of make it look a little bit funky. I did quite like the kind of the grey. I feel like the grey in this habitat and like all the rocks and things that I use really sort of contrast like kind of the green trees and things like that, which is why I wanted to kind of keep that kind of wooden rustic sort of feel, because I still feel it does feel a little bit rustic, even though it is just like concrete blocks at this point. But yes, the idea of this was that it was going to be leaning ever so slightly outwards, so the guests can't really get over it. But then the bears also can't get to the guests. So it's supposed to be like, I imagine this would be a lot smaller and a lot sort of more difficult for bears to actually get to if it were in like a real zoo. But the idea is the bears can't climb over it and get to the guests. So yeah. As I said, I was using a lot of rocks in this habitat, and I really enjoy building things just out of these rock pieces. I think it's really fun to do so. So, as you can see, I am doing that here, and essentially this whole area was just these rock pieces as a wall, and then I just decorated it with a load of plants to hide the bits I don't like, which is always useful to sort of do, really. If you're building and there's bits of a building you don't like, but you're generally happy with it, then I'd always suggest, just using plants and things to hide it up. So this is going to be the sort of the main viewing area here. and I wanted to sort of, you know, have it so that this is a sort of a very critically endangered species, and I wanted to kind of make a big deal of this habitat. So, like the giant panda habitat, that was a big habitat. The Bornean orangutan habitat is a big dome. You know, they're sort of interesting habitats for sort of the more endangered species, because that tends to be how it is in zoos anyway. I mean, obviously, I'm not really about realism, and I'm not really interested in making the zoo very realistic. However, I do think that there are key themes that should be sort of used when building habitats anyway. So I was really in two minds about what to do for the roof of this. And I decided I was just going to sort of create this kind of wooden sort of canopy kind of effect here. And I just wanted to cap off the little bits of rock here and make it look a little bit neater, fill any gaps and everything with more rocks, because that's what you tend to do. And then, yeah, I just created a pattern and just sort of duplicated it. I made sure that there was nothing sticking out, just neatened it up a bit. And I really like how it looks, because as I said, I like the contrast of the pale wood to the sort of the dark rock, and I feel like that kind of reflects the rest of this habitat. As I said, I was going for a very natural kind of rocky and rustic theme to sort of like, you know, a kind of mountainy sort of theme. So that's sort of the main bit of the viewing area done, really. I do another layer inside, just to sort of add a bit more detail a bit later on, and I do continue with the sort of the tree kind of tunnel, just again to sort of make it all match up and make it sort of feel like we're still in the same place. I put some pools out the front just to make it look a little bit kind of, you know, grand. A little, you know, there's something here that you want to come see, come and have a look, make it look enticing. So yeah, so we have this main viewing area, and then we have the cave, which is underneath Bamboo Station. And then the third sort of viewing area is kind of on the lake. There's going to be a boat ride eventually, and that's sort of on the lake there. So again, as I said, lots of rocks. Lots and lots of rocks in this build. But yeah, so the sort of range of the Himalayan brown bear is, again, it's sort of Nepal and kind of Pakistan and sort of those kind of areas, effectively along the Himalayas, you know, it's in the name. But it's important, again, that the biggest thing for them is just loss of habitat. And as always, whenever we're conserving species, you know, the biggest challenge, I think, really is actually maintaining habitat. So here, again, as I just quickly popping back to the video, as you can see with there, I'm building into the rock cliff. Like, if you ever want to make rocks look effective, build into like a cliff and just sort of clip it through. So this was going to be their little shelter. I have decided to sort of create it out of rocks, and you can effectively, you know, the way when I did my building circles without a grid video, you know how with the path you can effectively place a piece of grid and then move it to the left with the angle snap. You can do exactly the same with the rocks, so you can build a perfect circle with like rocks, and that's basically what I was doing here. So I thought I'd got it perfect, but I think the angle slightly changed, and I was moving it around, and then I actually started building a proper circle, kind of using the grid method with the pillars, and then I realized actually it wasn't a perfect circle, so I just tweaked it a bit. But you can see you can get pretty much a circular shape. Obviously when you're building things without the grid, you're not going to get a perfect circle, but you can get pretty close. So again, with this, I was effectively just placing a piece of rock, moving the next piece of rock like 15 degrees to the left or right, and then doing it. I actually did contemplate turning this into kind of like a mini henge monument, like Stonehenge or something, because that's kind of what it reminded me of. But I think this kind of fits in really nicely, and I do like how it looks. So yeah, I was really pleased with this. I was really pleased with how it was just simple, but I think effective. And I feel like that's kind of is a lot of what's happened sort of in Alphabet Zoo, is that I've not gone on like overcomplicated things. Most things are quite simple. The habitats are quite simple, but they look really like pleasing. Like they're just really aesthetic to look at. So yeah, just making sure the bears can get into this shelter. Now this is their main shelter, and it does provide 100% shelter under there. So yeah, so here we go. We're finishing off sort of the rest of the arena bear pit thing. I did have some comments saying that this looked horrendous, and it's like, well, of course it's going to look horrendous. It's a work in progress. And as well, like, I never just leave rocks I never leave rocks. You know, it's always gonna have to be covered in plants and things. And I was having a try out here with just some, like, you know, cap rocks and things like that, try and get that capping on the top, and then obviously just making sure the bears can't escape. Um, and so yeah, this is going to be sort of the view there from the lake, from the boat rides. Now obviously I wanted to sort of give the train a feel, because it's just sort of floating in midair. I got rid of all the track parts that are normally with it, because there's just too many for the train. The train is fantastic for getting guests around, but I wanted to sort of make it so it kind of fitted in a lot more. So I effectively just built some pillars, and I've built this very, very generic kind of sort of stand now to hold the tracks up, and it's going to be used throughout my zoo now. I put a few in over here just to sort of give it a bit of a feel, you know, just trying to slot them in places where they're sort of a bit inconspicuous. And then our bears go in. So our bears are called Winnie and Baloo. Obviously after Winnie the Pooh and Baloo the bear. And this is where we start going mad with plants, which is always my favourite thing to do. So as you can see here, we've got a lot of the rocks in place, and you know, I've layered them. Like when rocks get compressed, like rocks go through metamorphosis and they get folded, they get compressed by like pressure within the earth. The more they get buried, the more pressure they go under, so they get folded. So if you're ever placing rocks, like, you want to get like this kind of layered effect. Because that tends to be how rocks look like. You have different layers of rocks, so you'll have like a sandstone, and then some like more metamorphized sandstone, and then you'll get like limestone and, like, you know, chalk that gets metamorphized into limestone. And particularly with things like slate and shale, you know, you're gonna get that layering with the rocks, and in those layers is then where you want to put your plants, because that's where the plants are growing through those rocks and like sort of pushing the rocks apart. So I wanted to create this very forested sort of feel without like putting in too many trees and them losing a lot of habitat space. So this is the way I do it. I build habitats with like rocks in them, and then place the trees sort of growing out of the rocks into the soil and things like that, to try and it just maximizes your space while also making it look kind of very, very densely forested. So these are just tips. Again, if you've got quite a small habitat and you're worried about space, and suddenly you put trees in and you start losing space, because I've done that, like I think everyone does it. You can always put trees on the edge of the habitat, or you can put them sort of, you know, on rocks and things where the animals already can't get to. So, or like build into the shelter and stuff like that. So yeah, obviously they can't drink from the lake, so I put in a little pool here. I like to think as well that it kind of helps. It helps keep the guests a bit safer, because it keeps the bears away from like the fence. And then yeah, it was just, you know, doing some more moss work, trying to get the moss to sort of look like it's just, you know, gripping to the trees. I mean, we went to the Lake District recently, and we were walking in some like very dense woodlands, like kind of almost pine forest, which is effectively what these guys are living in here. And you get this very, very dense like moss that just grows, and it just carpets everything, and it looks gorgeous. And it's also really comfy to sit down in, though you will get like wet if you sit on it, because, you know, moss tends to like thrive in wet habitats and environments. But yeah, always kind of put the plants towards the edge of the habitat, like work from the edge inwards, and you know, it tends to grow around rocks and things like that. And yeah, like with trees as well, you get this dappled effect, so you get this kind of you know, as the sun goes through the different parts of the day, different parts of the ground are going to get covered in like light and things. So, you know, just try and reflect that kind of randomness. I mean, as I've said before, nature is chaotic, it's random, and you want to kind of keep it, you know, keep your plant work and your rock work random as well. Don't make it look too planned out. So yeah, and I did contemplate putting some sort of plants on top of this canopy here, but I decided to just go with ivy to kind of make a plant screen wall, just because, you know, they're an endangered species. I imagine they're quite shy of people. They don't want to be seeing people or hearing them. And again, like, you know, the whole theme of the zoo is to make it so that the animals aren't really disturbed by the people looking at them, and they're just, you know, they can just get on and do their own thing, and they've got plenty of space and stuff like that. So yeah, now I just sort of making this look less ugly. Although I do quite like the aesthetic of the layering of rock and things like that. I don't know, I just think it looks like sort of intentional and purposeful. I get that it's not everybody's thing, but yeah, so I just wanted to have some flower beds here, just to, you know, make it look kind of like a feature piece, really, because that's what it is. And I don't tend to use the topiaries either, so it was kind of cool to actually use the topiaries and actually, you know, have like some of these. I tried, like, you know, filling in this gap here, but decided I just didn't like how it looked. So I put some, like, you know, little fox and rabbit hedgehog over there, and then some deer around here, but I decided I didn't like them, so I just put a fountain and some abstract art there instead, a bit later on. So yeah, and again, that's kind of really most of the habitat done at this point. And again, you know, I wanted to make it look really grand and, like, important because, you know, they are so endangered, these bears. And, you know, brown bears across Europe are, you know, they're being persecuted, and it's why I think we need to have them in the UK at some point. I mean, as I touched on this in my last video. But, you know, we need to start building for these animals. We need to start creating habitat for them so we can have them. Otherwise, we're going to lose them, and it's really sad. Like, you know, the bears, I'd like to always think that there's bears on, you know, this main continent that I'm part of, rather than only having to go to, like, America to see them. And, you know, bears seem to be having a pretty tough time anyway, just because they're being, you know, persecuted by humans. So we should definitely do everything we can to protect them. So this was just, I like to think that this is just like a little garden here. Like, you know, you get those, like, I don't know if you've ever been to, like, Birmingham, or other places where they have, like, green walls. Now, obviously, I went to university in Birmingham, and around Birmingham New Street Station, they have, like, this kind of green wall project that they're going on. I mean, I'm pretty sure most of the plants died, but I get the sentiment that they were trying to go for. So this is kind of what I was building. I wanted to kind of build this kind of green wall kind of a thing going on and have, like, all these flower beds and just have it, you know, it's as part of the staff area. Let's have it look nice. And let's just fill in sort of all these, like, little gaps. And again, you know, plants, you can have beds and things, like very small flower beds in these kind of layers and things like that. So I put in some planters and then just had some floating of the air plants there, and then just sort of filling it all in and making it look pretty and like a complete project. Often it's just, you know, the final finishing touches, that the last few details that sort of brings a project together. So yeah, and this was just some wisteria pieces just because it was a different colour to the ivy, and I do love the wisteria pieces. I think it can really make a habitat. And again, just sort of finishing off this area. Now obviously, you know, the keepers have got this lovely area looking out to the lake now. The bears have got an area looking out to the lake, and it just all looks very sort of pleasing and aesthetic, and I can't wait to get the boat ride in at some point. So here's just the finishing touches now, the bear pit, and we are pretty much there now. So obviously, again, I wish there were more statues of all the different animals in the game. That's one of the things that annoys me, is that, you know, we only have a limited number of statues. We have all these animals that came with the base game, and, like, maybe 10 different, like, animals for them, and it's like, can we not have more statues for these animals? So yeah, just putting in the finishing touches now. Now I'll go and you'll be able to see me finishing off the bear cave. I had to do a lot of that out of recording because obviously with the bamboo station above it, it doesn't like me placing things too close to the bamboo station. So obviously, you know, just to do some finishing touches, I thought, why not do a how tall are you? And the sign on the right and the actual, I was actually looking for which is the largest bear in game at the moment and what their height was, so I popped them in. Himalayan bears do actually have sexual dimorphism, though the males are a lot bigger than the females. But yeah, so that's pretty much it now, and obviously, you know, just putting the speakers and that in, all the finishing touches, just making it look pretty. I didn't like how big those trees were, so I made them a bit smaller. And yeah, just finishing off the cave and the viewing area up here. And yeah. So do let me know what you think in the comments below. I appreciate any and all feedback, just because, you know, I like to know what you guys think of what I do. Here is obviously just the entrance now to the cave viewing bit. But yeah, so if you want to see more content, Planet Zoo videos will be released every Tuesday and Friday, so subscribe if you want to see that regular content. I'm releasing other videos on the weekends, but that's kind of mainly what I'm working on. If you want to see where Alphabet Zoo's going, subscribe and you'll be able to follow Alphabet Zoo sort of every Tuesday and Friday. So yeah, I will leave you now with the cinematics. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one. So take care, guys, out there, and stay safe.